This is NDDC Today.
So for now, put the house in order. Then what I thought we were set up to do. Make sure the audit, the forensic. We asked for it. None of the governors, NDDC governors asked for it. And we told the president to also set up the governing council as required by the advisory council as required by law. So we'll be interfacing with the board.
That because of what we see as governors from the Niger Delta, that there was the need to carry out a forensic audit of the activities of the Niger Delta Development Commission, so that from the results that we get from that audit, it will be possible to streamline the activities of the NDDC with a view to putting it on course.
When NDDC does not fulfill its mandate, who suffers? The people in this region. And so we, the governors of the NDDC, have decided that we will work with the new acting managing director to reposition the operation. And one of the key mandates for us is to make sure that a thorough forensic audit is undertaken.
Hello, good evening. Nice that you can join us again. Now, there are three nobodies I know. The first nobody is nobody kicks over a dead dog. A dog has to be active to attract attention. The NDDC is active, therefore it attracts a lot of attention. The second nobody is nobody said it was going to be easy. There is no way an organization like the NDDC will just sit there pretty doing everything smoothly, because it is catering for so many interests and so many states, so there's always likely to be so much attention. Now, the third nobody is, I haven't met, in our experience with the NDDC, any management that has not attracted a lot of flack, a lot of allegations, and a lot of make-believe. So it's not surprising. There's a lot of talk right now about so many things about the NDDC, and only one person can dispel all that. The Director of Corporate Affairs himself, Mr. Charles Odili, who we are proud to have today to explain away some of these things. But the first thing, of course, what started all this is the forensic audit. And you saw all the governors there saying that they want an audit. So what is so bad about having an audit? After all, actually, every organization in Nigeria should go through this exercise so that organizations can be responsive to the reasons they're set up. So it's not surprising. So today, we're going to take a look at some of the explanations and see what the NDDC is doing in its own bit to offer palliatives to lockdown members of the Niger Delta. Welcome to NDDC Today. President Muhammadu Buhari in October 2019 ordered a forensic audit of the activities of the Interventionist Agency from 2001 to 2019. It was observed that the humongous amount of money allocated to the Commission over the years has not churned out commensurate projects and infrastructure across the Niger Delta region. However, the Niger Delta Development Commission had over time made it clear that some of the factors mitigating against it to perform optimally included the indebtedness of the federal government to the Commission and delay by all companies in fulfilling their obligations to the agency. These monies, they claimed, if they came on time, would have gone a long way in assisting the completion of many abandoned projects across the Niger Delta region. To resolve everything, the agitations about non-performance led immediately to the establishment of a three-man Interim Management Committee, IMC, to oversee the affairs of the Commission and work with the audit team that would be engaged for the probe. The 3-member interim management committee was eventually expanded to 5, with the earlier acting managing director, Dr. Joy Nunye, replaced with Professor Keme Bradukumo Daniel Ponde. The other 4 are Chief Ibanga Basi Etang, Acting Executive Director of Finance and Administration, EDFA, Dr. Cairo Ojobo, Acting Executive Director Projects, EDP, Mrs. Caroline Nagbo, Member, and Cecilia Bukola Akintomide, Member. To show the seriousness he attached to the forensic auditing of the NDDC, President Buhari in January 2020 officially informed the Senate, who had earlier resolved not to have any dealings with the IMC, of his decision to vet the books of the NDDC. The Senate accepted his explanations, declaring its total support for the NDDC forensic audit. In February 2020, the Federal Executive Council, FEC, approved the appointment of Messrs. Olumoyewa Bashiru and Company as lead consultant for the forensic audit. The lead consultant would coordinate the appointments of other forensic auditors that would take part in the exercise. It has not been a smooth time for the NDDC. The proposed forensic audit has attracted a lot of controversy. While many welcome the idea, many also have questioned the singling out of the NDDC for scrutiny, where many other government agencies have not fared any better. While some say important interested parties are afraid of being found out and are therefore fighting the IMC, others opine that the past should be corrected and let to rest and should not be the main focus of the IMC. After all, they say, what the Niger Delta needs now is development, not the list of people convicted. So basically, that's how it all started. Now, the forensic audit is supposed to be on its way. As we said, a lot of controversy is being generated in that direction right now, with many people coming on with all kinds of spurious allegations. Now, there's nothing wrong with being interested in a place, but it is good that when you say something, you're able to prove it. The Director of Corporate Affairs, Mr. Charles Odili, was recently forced to make some explanations about some of the things unproved floating around.
The attention of the Niger Delta Development Commission (NDDC) has been drawn to yet another set of false allegations of corruption against the Commission. Coming few days after the Commission went to extraordinary lengths to counter false allegations of corruption in its operations in the past 3 months, it beats our imagination if there will ever be a time the NDDC will be allowed by its detractors to focus on its work. One day after another, one group of faceless stakeholders or the other, who are mere fronts for those who looted the resources of the Commission in the past, make wild and improbable allegations against the Commission. In the past, they had recourse to online platforms, since no mainstream medium would publish allegations without facts. It is therefore worrying that these enemies of the Niger Delta, for that is the best description for those who are bent on destroying the NDDC, have found new allies in the mainstream media. The detractors of the Commission are now hiding under the resolution of the National Assembly to trash the reputation of the Interim Management Committee (IMC). We wish to state there is no 40 billion naira fraud in NDDC. As stated last week, the total sum received by the IMC is 33 billion naira, out of which it has spent 22 billion naira. The expenditure includes payment of staff salaries, service providers, debts and contractual debts of 50 million naira and below. The questions are, can 40 billion naira be stolen when it does not exist? Is the payment of staff salaries and benefits an act of corruption? Should poor helpless contractors who worked for the Commission and were being owed for more than 5 years not be paid sums as low as 1 million naira? The Commission concedes that the National Assembly has a constitutional right to investigate its operations if and when it deems it necessary. However, we find allegations which have no substance and serve no purpose other than generating adverse newspaper headlines unhelpful. These baseless allegations pose a grave threat to the success of the forensic audit of the NDDC directed by President Muhammadu Buhari, following widespread requests by stakeholders, including governors of the Niger Delta states. It is on record that President Muhammadu Buhari directed that the NDDC forensic audit, which has been widely applauded as a crucial move and the only process that can cleanse NDDC, be overseen by the IMC. However, jittery perpetrators and beneficiaries of the old order that almost killed the NDDC have been relentlessly ascribing all manner of spurious misdeeds to the IMC in their selfish bid to hang the IMC and stultify the forensic audit. We welcome the inquiry and invite the public to patiently wait for its outcome. In addition, we insist that the National Assembly session with the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Senator Godswill Akpabio, and the IMC be an open one. We are ready to defend our activities. In order to put these matters to rest, we are asking for a public hearing televised live so Nigerians can directly appreciate the hard work and determination of the present IMC to make the Commission fit for purpose. This will also provide the public an opportunity to know the truth about what is going on in the NDDC. It will enable them see through the charade of unceasing false allegations designed to truncate the forensic audit of the NDDC. It is also pertinent we invite the public to note that the IMC is not unmindful that aggrieved culprits and receivers of the long-standing plunder of the Commission's resources are extremely perturbed with some recent decisions of the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs and the IMC. Top among the so-called sins of the Minister of the Niger Delta Affairs and the IMC are refusal to make payments for outrageous and fictitious desilting jobs, stoppage of ghost payments for questionable training programs, and discontinuation of phantom payments through faceless non-governmental organizations. The Commission will go to the public hearing with records of the phony contracts that the IMC has been under pressure to pay, the refusal of which is triggering the current spate of attacks. Finally, we want to reiterate our unyielding determination to manage the forensic audit of the NDDC in an extremely transparent manner. No amount of malicious and selfish campaigns to stand truth on its head will dissuade the IMC from delivering on its mandate. The great people of the Niger Delta and all other well-intentioned stakeholders should please disregard unfounded allegations and rest assured that the forensic audit is on course to pave the way for the birth of a stronger and more responsive NDDC. Charles Obi Odili, Director, Corporate Affairs.
The world and Nigeria reel under the devastating effects of coronavirus, now christened COVID-19. The NDDC rises to protect its 20 million people. These people, already devastated by epidemics of lack of basic amenities and infrastructure, soil and air pollution, poverty, cannot afford another one. The spread of this harbinger of death. Mastering a resource of over 1.4 billion naira, the NDDC budgets 775 million naira to help the Niger Delta to provide ventilators, oxygen apparatus, drugs across the 9 states of the Niger Delta. 270 million naira to fast-track isolation centers in 27 senatorial districts across the region. This epidemic that has so far killed over 92,000 people worldwide must not be allowed a foothold in the Niger Delta. Meanwhile, Niger Deltans are strongly urged to cooperate with all the guidelines of the NCDC self-isolation, social distancing, hand cleanliness, protection of face areas, management of sneezes and coughs, and adherence to lockdowns. The NDDC backs the NCDC to stop COVID-19 in its tracks in the Niger Delta. Will you join us? The NDDC, determined to make a difference.
So you've heard from the horse's mouth, explaining some of the spurious allegations floating around. And he always says that if you want some information, genuine information about the NDDC, the Corporate Affairs Department is there at the main building, at the main headquarters of the NDDC on Aba Road, Port Harcourt. You can make all your inquiries there. Now, in spite of all that, the NDCCC and the IMC are doing their work, one of which is to say, how can the NDDC be of help to Niger Deltans who are now suffering under the various lockdowns and the impending fear of COVID-19. The IMC recently had to set up an organizing committee to oversee how its palliatives are going to be spread across the 9 Niger Delta states.
The Niger Delta Development Commission NDDC has inaugurated a committee for the distribution of palliatives to cushion the effects of the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic on the people of the Niger Delta region. Speaking during the inauguration of the committee at the NDDC headquarters in Port Harcourt, the NDDC Acting Managing Director, Professor Keme Bradikumo Ponde, said that setting up the committee was another response of the Commission to COVID-19 and the effects of the lockdown to assist the Niger Delta people. The NDDC Chief Executive Officer was joined by the Acting Executive Director, Finance and Administration, Chief Ibanga Basi Atang, and the Acting Executive Director, Projects, Dr. Cairo Ojugbo, during the ceremony. Ponde charged the committee, which has Mr. Soboma Jakrik as its chairman and Right Honorable Victor Antai as the secretary, with all the state directors of the commission to relieve the pains of the lockdown on the Niger Delta people.
We have a lot of people in the rural areas, the far-to-reach areas across the 9 states, and we felt that there was a need to come up with a very good strategy on how to distribute this palliative, and we want a situation whereby these things will reach as many people as possible, especially those who do not have. We are in a funny country where even those who have will also want to partake, but I believe that as much as possible we'll try to reach everybody, irrespective of gender, religious affiliation, political affiliation, and age. Let's try as much as possible, especially the vulnerable. And so the state directors, I believe, are all present here. And I think in each of the states, there has to be like a replication of an action committee that will be involved in this distribution. We expect certain groups to be carried along in the different states. The traditional rulers, the religious bodies.
The NDDC interim management and members of the committee later inspected the items for distribution at the 2 warehouses of the commission. They include food items such as bags of gari, rice and beans. Other items were palm oil, indomie, noodles and biscuits. The palliatives also included sanitizers, wheelchairs, crutches, inhalers, among others. The NDDC had earlier released over 1 billion naira to assist governors of the 9 states of the region in the fight against the pandemic, including 775 million naira for palliatives to youths, women and the physically challenged, as well as another 270 million to fast-track the establishment of isolation centers in the 27 senatorial districts of the region.
the organizing committee of the palliatives for Niger Deltans moves into action. No one says they're going to be able to do everything, but at least the NDDC is saying they will do their own bit. And hopefully that bit will be good enough. Now, recently, we've been told that the police has pledged that they will protect the NDDC no matter what happens, and the police actually warns miscreants. It was the occasion of the courtesy call of the new Commissioner of Police of Rivers State to the NDDC.
The Rivers State Police Command has assured the Niger Delta Development Commission NDDC of providing adequate security to enable it deliver on its mandate to the people of the Niger Delta region. Giving the assurance during a courtesy visit at the NDDC headquarters in Port Harcourt, the Rivers State Commissioner of Police, Mr. Joseph Mukan, said that those threatening arson at the Commission would be stopped in their tracks. The Commissioner, who was received by the NDDC Acting Managing Director, Professor Kemebradikumo Ponde, the Acting Executive Director of Finance and Administration, Chief Ibanga Basi Etang, the Acting Executive Director Projects, Dr. Cairo Ujugbo, warned those plotting evil against the Commission to desist forthwith.
And no policing of Rivers State will be complete without scoring NDDC. This, I want to beg and reassure this commission, in spite of the threats, you've seen it in the media 2 weeks ago, whatever intention of the evil ones to burn down this place, I wish to assure you that that can never succeed. We will put our machineries in place. The Inspector General of Police have taken it personally to ensure that this commission is secure. And this is giving me the marching orders, put security architecture in place, which we've done, put it together with the executives of the commission.
Mukan reiterated that the police would do everything possible to ensure that the NDDC was adequately secured to enable it deliver projects and programs for the people of the Niger Delta region, assuring that the cooperation that had existed between the Commission and the police would continue and be strengthened.
We are going to be proactive in how to go about it. We will not wait for it to happen before we start running up and down. But our machineries are already on the ground, and be rest assured nothing the enemy will destroy this commission will come to life. The IG sees this commission as very strategic, and we hold it dearly to his heart to ensure that the corporate services people are rendering to the South will be accomplished.
Responding, Professor Ponde thanked the Police Commissioner for cooperating with the NDDC, noting that the bond between the Commission and the police would be further strengthened. He stated that the NDDC was resolute in ensuring that it rendered quality service to the people of the region in line with its mandate.
We've had a cordial working relationship because without security, we'd not be able to do the intervention for which the NDDC was set up. And the Nigerian Police Force continues to provide security and other logistic services to the Commission. And we are very grateful for this relationship, and we hope that it will continue and it will even be made even stronger. It's something that we cannot take lightly. And we know that it has to do with the forensic audits that is ongoing, and we, working together with the Nigerian Police Force, will make sure that nothing untoward happens towards the Commission, and I believe that working together we will be able to deliver the mandate for which the commission was set up.
The new police commissioner for Rivers State, Joseph Moka, a courtesy call to the IMC of the NDDC, led here by the acting MD, Professor Kemebradi Kumar Ponde, pledging that the police will protect the NDDC. That's the kind of assurance we need these days in such circumstances of uncertainty that can only actually breed fear. But as we always say, do not be afraid. Someone is in control. We'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us.